have David that will present a little bit of his work. And I give the word to David. Please go ahead.
Yeah. I'll share my screen for the presentation. Let's see where I have it. Share window, screen, which one? Wait a moment. Share. No. Okay, here it is. All right. You're sharing your screen, yeah? Do you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, David,
already?
You
Okay.
just have to put it in screen, full screen.
Yeah, I will. So, okay, right. Now I see it in the Zoom as well. Fine. So, yeah, I will first give the explanation. There are a few parts, but I would ask you to wait until the end with questions. Maybe, because that will be easier, because there's quite a lot of ground to be covered. I will first talk about the ITC a bit, then about MGBMS, then how we retrieve data from GGCE, because I realized that there are quite a lot of ways that it can be done and that there is communication with GGCE. And then finally, how we synchronize our system with GGCE. So without further ado, let me start here with the, okay, no, sorry, I need to click below. Just a second, all right. So ITC, International Transit Center, is located in Belgium. We have both medium and long-term storage for bananas and also cassava, but bananas are our main topic. So there we go.
David, before you start,
yes,
it's not in full screen yet.
Oh, maybe I need to move it. So let me.
Thank you.
Settings, because I see it in full screen, but I maybe end slideshow. I'm going to stop sharing a moment, and then share again. And then going to fire it up, and then go back to my Zoom meeting, and then say share. Here, now it should be fine.
Yes, thank you.
Yes?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay, good. Much better. So ITC, some pictures. As you can see, we are the largest banana collection in the world with 1,705 collection. We have now a 40-year anniversary this year. And we've been integrated with the FAO's in Trust collection since 1994. These are some, here you have a few of our gene banks, of our climate chambers in which the plants are growing before they end up in the collection. 3 approaches. We do medium-term conservation with in vitro. We have cryo in long term, and we also have a leaf bank in which we keep leaf tissues. Just where we are on the map, we are in Belgium. Somehow people seem to think we are in France, but that is not the case. The collection is in Belgium, in Leuven, to be more precise, where we are located in the buildings of the KU Leuven. Then a quick word about the technology setup. We use, it's not very different from what GGCE is doing actually. We have a database, in this case running on SQL Server. And we use Microsoft technology, ASP.NET Core Platform, which is published on GitLab, and from GitLab we have an automatic deployment pipeline to Docker. The pages themselves, of course, are like any web page, so to say, any visual browser page made up of HTML5 in a Razor page format because it's the ASP.NET Core platform. Our graphics are run by Tailwind because I like their styling method. And we make our pages dynamic by using jQuery and regular JavaScript as well. So it's accessed to our KU Leuven intranet. If we're outside, we can reach it to a VPN. The focus of the MGBMS. So what does MGBMS stand for? It's the MUSA Gene Bank Management System. And our core is the collection itself, or the material handling. Maybe I should put more emphasis still on handling than on material because it's the processes that we track. We start with the acquisition, as always. We initiate, we multiply, it goes into medium-term storage, and then the conservation process maintains itself until we maintain it until we distribute it to our users. And as such, MGBMS tracks a lot of data. It tracks the materials, it tracks the processes. So every single action that we undertake on a material is registered separately from the material. We register the locations. So we've got labs, we've got climate chambers, we've got cryo tanks, we've got envelopes for the leaf samples. We also have a full-fledged document management system, which we keep, for example, the plant import permits, the passport data for the plants, SMTAs that we signed, so that you can, with one click, get all the documents relative to a specific order or to a specific accession. We keep center and contact data. We have reporting tools in which we bring information together in an easy decision-making format, and we can export to and import from Excels and export to PDFs so that we have specific data sheets. All right. Label printing is also an essential part. Every material that we have, every test tube that we have is tagged with a label. So we've been doing this for quite some time, and it's been growing a lot. And we have now about 8 printers distributed over different locations. They are steered with a print server installed on our devices, the client devices itself. And we use label templates which select the lines that we want to print. So normally our use is to have one click on save and print on which a specific action is saved and the label is printed for the specific topic. We can also make custom labels, but for the lab we didn't want to make it too difficult, so we pre-established the format, and then it comes out of the printer which sits next to the lab technician, so that it can be tagged right away, and there's no confusion which template should be chosen. Right. Now, our quality assurance also resides in the back end. So you've got a front end, which is the user interface, what you actually see on the screen. But the back end is what happens when you click the save button, so to say. So it all starts with a good database design. I know that the USDA database, the GRIN-Global database, focuses mainly on objects, and the processes are implicit. We focus first on processes. What are you doing? And then we keep the materials, of course, as well, the objects, but what is going on, the activity is more important than the material, or just as important as the material that we provide. Also, the way that we do this, whenever we click before you post, we will already have alerts saying that data are not correct. But then when we click on save, we also, before we start saving, make sure that everything is 100% all right. Then we also send warnings or alerts. So for example, you can see here in the lower right corner, if you save something, you get the info. It edited successfully with the ID. These messages can be a bit more descriptive, but if something goes wrong, you also see in red letters what went wrong and what they should do to fix it or who they should contact. We keep everything traceable. We have a user log. We have one big table that keeps everything, starting with when a user logs in, to when he saves something, when he added something. Everything except viewing is steered by this, is logged into this traceability table. And while it's important that we make absolutely sure that data saved is consistent, it's also important that you have a good interface and that it's usable by the user. So we only show things that are relevant to a specific type of user. So admins get a lot more data than the lab users. The application is accessed using a browser. It could be on a tablet or a PC. In the lab, it's typically using a scanner where the labels that are on top of the test tubes are scanned and then automatically get read into the application. We also try to involve our team as much as possible with the application directly. We don't develop something and then tell them this is how you do it. We first go talk with our users and ask them what they want, and then we build it, and then we listen if they like it or not. So we believe that listening to users is key, not so much top-down, more bottom-up. All right. In the layout, I put here an example of what is typically on a page for us. We have filters that you can show or hide. You can look things up on a text-based search, but you also get ranges of times, or you can look up based on statuses where you choose from a drop-down list. We show the sort explicitly as a text field. We show also how many results there are in total, and there's pagination in case there are many results. So like here, there are 1,723 results. We show them 50 at a time so that it goes quick enough. And you can narrow down your results by using the filter. Sorting is simply by clicking on the highlighted header of a column. And of course, there are page links, just like in GGCE. A final part to complete our system is the user role setup. I think most systems have it. We use lab users for clonal, for cryo. We have admins and we have super admins. We separated out the super admin so that deletion can't happen by accident. And this leads to, for example, dynamic navigation. So if you log in as an admin user, you see much more. You're here in the config menu. The submenu here has 7 items. While if you log in as a lab user, you only have 1 item. So this is purely based on the role a user belongs to. It also determines who can edit, who can view what. If a person tries to click somewhere or even copy in a link to a place where he's not allowed, he gets redirected right away. We keep the navigation in a tree, and that you can then assign permissions very easily based on that tree. Okay, So for MGBMS, now let us talk a moment about our partners. As you can see, I try to make it a bit divisive according to acquisition, distribution, and conservation. Conservation being the collection. Starts with acquisition. We get the plans from our donors. We receive information from our partners. And then we send the information to FAO GLIS system that Edwin discussed in the last Crop Trust COP meeting for those who were there. And we receive the DOI back and we register it in our system. Then it goes into conservation. So our collection, we push our data from there to GGCE, especially inventories and MCPD data, but also taxons, etc. And from there, in the future, we want to pass them on to our colleagues in Montpellier with the MGIS system. And they then send it to Genesis. For orders, we get requests from an internal system, the MUSA online ordering system. We also get orders from Genesis and to emails. And then we send our plans to users and we register the orders in EasySMTA. Okay. Now, everyone with me still, I hope? Yes.
Yes, David, please continue.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
No, it's just to make sure that you can still hear me and so on. So far, I've been talking about MGBMS, how it's set up, where our emphasis lies. Now I've got some slides on how we deal with retrieval from and writing to GGCE. Because I noticed that quite a few of you still use the curator tool. That's fine with me, but I also know that there's a push that Mattia wants to get rid of the curator tool because he doesn't want to be bound to its backwards compatibility forever. I can get that, and he heartily recommends the GGCE API. As far as I know, except from SIAD, we are the only ones using the GGCE API, but I would like to hear later on from people if there are other gene banks who do that. In any case, that's how we work now. And as it is pushed, but nobody uses it, I want to show how it's prepared, because you need to get some stuff in place before you can start talking to GGCE. So in the first place, you need to define users who can access and clients who can talk with the system in the background, and then you need to give permissions. So for example, here for taxons, we had to give explicit permissions for our API. So I created a specific client for the MGBMS system, and I gave it full permissions on GGCE. That's on the GGCE side. Then on the application side, the first thing you need to do is to make sure that you can actually connect. So you need to set up a password. If you can see here, you've got a client ID that you need to specify and a client secret. You need to keep these really secret, so we put them in an environment. You read them out in the code. You talk to an endpoint. You pass it on, and then you get a token object from GGCE. It took me quite a while, a bit more than a week, to get this set up. But in the end, once you have your coding platform collaborating and you get a token, then everything is fine. The next step, once you are connected, is to match fields. You can say maybe, oh, that's easy. You look at the Swagger UI, but there are literally hundreds of API endpoints. So it can be challenging to find the right location for a field. So what I do now, which is the easiest, is first say which field do I want to synchronize. Then I go to the GGCE UI and I set up my developer tools. Then I look it up in the UI and then I implement it. So I have some images to go with this. For example, here I want to know where the geolocation has been saved. So I just navigate to a specific accession in GGCE in the standard interface, but I switch on the network tab of my developer tools. It's always a bit different if you use Chrome or Edge or Firefox. In this case, this is Firefox, I assume. And then you look in the list to something that says get and something that has an ID with it. And then you click on that line. If you click on it, and you can confirm that the response is indeed the one that you are looking for. And it also shows which is the request that you've used. So here you can see that it was the V2 version of the Swagger UI that you go talking to A for accession in an endpoint that's called details. And that is then the endpoint that you can look up in your Swagger UI together with the ID that is given. So I pasted in a screenshot of the same page. You can then go to Swagger UI and look up all the information. You can even try it out and make sure that your code will work if you pass on a specific object. Here, you just pass on an ID, which is relatively straightforward. If you want to save something, you will paste in a JSON object, and you need to make check that you get a 200 response. I assume that you're all wintered programmers and that this makes complete sense to you. But this is the basic way to get there. Now, that's when the coding starts. Everything what I have just done is just to make sure that you get the right endpoint in the API, to make sure that you're using the same data, the correct data format, and that GGCE can pull it in correctly. Now, normally you wouldn't have to do this if you're using your internal database. Then you have an object relation mapper, in our case, Entity Framework Core, but most database applications have something similar. In any case, here you are at the same point, and then the GGCE part is also done, so to say, because now you do the same what you do as if you have your data in a database and you load your MVC. Yeah? So you put your data into a model, you process the model with your controller, and you visualize it in your view for the user interface, right? All right. Now, this was the part. How do we get our GGCE data? I hope you found this useful, that you can see how we are pulling this in. It's a radically different approach from the curator tool, but I believe it's more flexible, and I support Mattia in his endeavor to make it, to promote it and make it popular. But yeah, to each his own, I guess. In any case, it works for us, and this is the way we go. In the next part, I just want to talk a little bit about our synchronization, because what we do is keep GGCE in check with our internal system. Now, I would say that we are using GGCE in production like anybody else. The difference is that other people first, like Andrew, told us that his people write data on an Excel template, and then the Excel template is used to feed it into the GGCE. Instead of using an Excel template, we use the MGBMS to capture data in a strategic way, and we integrate it then with GGCE, with the difference that we don't have to copy it out, but we just click the button after inspecting it. Now, as you know, there are several parts in interacting with the system. CRUD is a classical one, so consult, read, create, read, update, and delete. What we are we will start with the reading. So for synchronization, what we first do is see how our data compares with GGCE. So we have specific pages that for a specific accession in this case show the data that we have in MGBMS and show the data that is in GGCE. Now, if the data is not 100% the same, they get highlighted. Here, this is an old screenshot or something is wrong because they are actually the same. But we see here, for example, that the institution is filled out in MGBMS, but it's not present yet in GGCE. So a click by checking this field and then clicking on Update Accession in GGCE, we override the value in GGCE and make sure it fits. Same goes for the taxonomy. We make sure that all taxonomy levels are matching in an exact manner on the accession level. But of course, we have hundreds of accessions. It would be very hard to do this one by one. So we also do this at the collection level, and we allow scanning with lots and lots of filters so that you can choose if you only want to see scanned ones, if you want to see ones with problems, if you want to see ones that are not scanned yet, if you want to see ones that are not present in GGCE yet, and so on, so that you can take the correct action. Now, at the collection level, this does give us a problem a bit, because if we want to update more than 20 reading out, we can read out as much as you want. But if you want to update, we can only do 20 accessions at a time, which is fine. We just use pagination to build around this, but we could also reduce still further the number of accessions that have changed, because basically we're now up to date. It would be easier if we only showed the ones that have changed and double check on those. So that's a working point that we still have. What do we do then with it? For example, here, this is our overview of inventories. So if you can see, N means if it can be distributed or not, if it's available for distribution. Then we have MTS, medium-term storage, which is the in vitro collection, cryo, and number of leaf samples in leaf bags. And then we have a final column, BSV positive, but available. These are plants that are infected with a specific virus, but that might, under specific conditions, still be sent out. We're still figuring out how to put this into GGCE, but we already put it in our overview page. Now, in this case, I drew a filtered list in which I said, give me the one with problems. Then I could see for MTS in our system, we can see that it is available in medium-term storage. We have it in vitro, but in GGCE, this inventory is not registered yet. A problem. Cryo, the same, it's not in GGCE yet. Now I can sync this one by one by clicking on Sync GGCE Inventories. And in this case, the button will create inventories for this accession. Or you can just select 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 of these accessions and then click on a button below, and then it will do it for all of them, and then it becomes synchronized. Other things may go wrong, and I've been wrestling for a few weeks with the taxons to get them completely lined up, because we had taxons that then corresponded with multiple GGCE taxons, and there were other cases as well. That's finally over with now, but I still had the screenshot. So for example, there was a situation in which we had one taxonomy for a number of accessions, but in GGCE there were multiple taxonomies. I then listed our taxon, in this case Pisangawak, with what was in GGCE, and I compared. This allowed us to double check, is this the right subspecies for this accession, 334, and we could very easily just write the correct species ID and then by one click on the knob on the button, accessions 334 and 692 were updated, in this case to the 633 GGCE species ID. All right. So we have now finally, after a long time, all our accessions and inventories in GGCE at this point. It's synchronized in real time, and we can detect which ones are available. We have the multi-crop passport data available. We have all taxonomies. We've got descriptors. Are there still some inconsistencies? Maybe for the location, and we still need to do the collecting missions. For inventories, we also don't keep all the materials because there's not enough fields in GGCE to make sensitive use of them, but we can say in GGCE right away now if these materials exist, if these germplasms are present, if they're available for distribution, or if they are not existing, which is just as important, that we can know if they are there or not. So, is this in production? I see that the term is used very broadly. We consider this to be the endpoint for us to like push all the data that we can push at this time into GGCE. Now, there are, of course, still other things to do. For example, the collecting sites and the collecting missions. And technically, we could drop the MGBMS and rebuild everything that we have in GGCE and then doing it the way that we want it. So we could use only the data that we think is relevant, couple them in the background, make a user interface that is specific for our gene bank, leaving out the data that we do not want to see. But that would mean rebuilding the GGCE UI from scratch. Now, frankly, even if I would not do GGCE, just dealing with new needs already is quite a lot of work, and making sure that everything is running fine and solving problems and making sure that the lab is registering everything correctly and labels everything correctly. Rebuilding in GGC would be an incredible work, and we don't have the budget for it. I am the IT team, just like in World Vegetable Bank, and I know quite a number of other gene banks where the IT team consists of one man. So even if we would say, okay, David, you go for it, you can do it, the time constraint, it would be, I would be building on this for, I guess, 10 years or so to just build what we have now. So we prefer to focus on what is important for us and keep it up to date. Now, also, the other big problem is that a lot of data that we have in our system, that we want to know, that we want to track, just isn't there in GGCE. So also, we can't change to GGCE alone because GGCE isn't ready for us to keep our data. But I know we're working on this, so maybe in the future, we will actually be able to gradually move to GGCE, but then I talk about a lifespan of maybe 15 years ahead. If GGCE would, of course, keep on developing like crazy and listen to all our requests. Now, the final touch that we consider, we now have lots of overview pages that show what we have and point out like, oops, there's a mistake in GGCE. What we are now working on is to make a one-click integration so that at the moment that you make changes to an accession or to an inventory and you register something, that you go checking if this is already in GGCE, that you update GGCE all with one button. So the user just clicks save, and without him or her knowing it, we will save the data to our database and to GGCE all in one go, and then we would never have to check our consistency quality control pages again. But as you can see from the idyllic picture, I see that as a beautiful dream so far to complete this, and there's still some work to be done before we get there. But it's good to dream, right? And to have high hopes. So with this, I conclude my presentation and I open the ground for questions.
Thank you, David. Thank you very much for a really, really nice presentation with very much clarity. So like David said, we are open for questions, comments. I have already one question. It's already answered, but I will mention it anyway. But I will give priority to the colleagues. Any question, colleagues?
See, there's
Or
a
any
chat.
comment? Okay, so if until somebody is thinking a little bit more, maybe it was too
Just
much
you.
information.
Yeah, I know it's quite a lot.
Okay.
I tried to give a bit of an overview of the different parts. Maybe we should go little by little. Huh? Does anybody have questions about the GGCE API or is interested in? Yeah.
Anil, yes, please unmute yourself and ask.
Hi, David. Nice presentation and good to see your presentation. I have two doubts. It's a general, not about your one question is about your process and one question is general. My general question is, did anyone is using weighing balance with a GGCE? And my second question is, in your last slide, you mentioned it as a save into your MGB application and it to GGCE on one click means from your own application to GGCE or GGCE to your database?
No, well, the difference would not exist any longer in the last situation. If we have one click, then there is no R application and the GGCE database because it would be written at the same time. The code would be written independently, so to say. It would just be, but the interface would be our application, so to say. But it's just the same, the GGCE application in that sense.
Yeah.
And for the first question, I
you
didn't actually understand what you said, the wind balance or
actually, for us, we have maintaining 11 crops. In that 11 crops, while distributing the germplasm, we need to weigh exactly how much quantity we are distributing. So
yeah, but
we need to use the weighing balance to take the exact weight.
sure,
So
no,
any organization is using weighing balance with the GGC.
No. In our case, we sent test tubes. We just send how many tubes we send, and we don't weigh them because it's only in the case of seeds that it makes sense to determine the weight. So we are purely clonal crops. That's one of our bigs that we have with
Yes, David. From with ICRISAT, we have all the grains and seeds are there. That's why I raised this question.
No, I don't.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Anna.
Thanks. See, Norma.
Norma, please. You are muted, Norma.
Yes, sorry. Good morning and good afternoon for everybody. My question is about what just Dave said, that if we understand what is the difference in between GGC API and regular, so it's two different versions, is something like that?
Well, no, I just wanted to. I know that in CIAT you guys use the GGC API just the same. Hermes is also programming in the same way as I just showed. He can, well, not, okay. He used the same interface, but I know that Andrew, for example, last week or 3 weeks ago, in the last seminar, he showed us how we used the curative tool. And I know that a number of people are using the curative tool, and I also understand why. Huh? Many of these gene banks have put lots of effort into making the curative tool work. I wasn't here at that time, so luckily for us, we had some backlog. And if you would have to do it all again, it's a lot of work to rebuild this all into code and make the separate calls and match them up and stuff. You can ask Thomas as well. I'm sure you will agree that his days are quite busy. But that's why I think a number of people use the curative tool still. And then there's the ones that use the GGCE API application programming interface directly, writing with objects to the endpoints. And then there are still some of us who use in between methods that use like open source apps in which they load their data and that then are coupled in the background to the GGCE API. I know in Africa they had a couple of these apps in which they use fixed formats to load limited information. That's why I brought it up. But I am guessing, maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe everybody knew how to communicate with GGC using the API already. But I thought it might be useful just to take away the fear or to give some background info.
Yes, David, it's very useful. And even if people already know, it's very, very useful to reminder, because we are 11, 12 gene banks and we are at different levels. So I think this is useful for somebody, I'm sure. Norma, if you don't have any question, anybody else have any other comment or question? Yes, Rizalina, please.
Hi, thank you. Good morning and good evening, everyone. Thank you, David, for your nice presentation. In regards to your internal database, the Musa, do you have I was thinking if you have similar transaction tables and master tables wherein how do you deal with that with updating your GGCE?
I'm not sure what you mean with master tables. We have a standard setup with a few stored procedures. I'm not so happy with it, the mechanism. I prefer to see it in code. We've got views and we've got tables. Most tables that we have are really basic data. What I do use for GGC, I have helper tables. I guess you might mean that for construction tables. Because, for example, with the accessions, you don't know the ID, and the only way to find the ID in GGCE is to use the DOI, the GLIS DOI, document object identifier. And if you have to do that every time you want to talk or look at an accession, it's a lot of work. And that never changes, that DOI. So I have a table that already matches our MGBMS accession ID with the GGCE accession ID. Is that an answer to your question?
Similar to what I'm looking for, but it's hard work.
But I try to avoid it as much as possible, because you need to keep it up to date, and it's a mess really quickly. But a minimum, I do track what we have matched already and what we have not matched yet. And I think if I can still extend it with a modified date, then it can be, I can really efficiently highlight which are the ones that I still need to make sure that they are consistent with GGC.
Thank you.
Yes. Khadija.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, David, for your nice presentation. It's very enriching in information. So my question is that when you push your data to GGCE, do you follow a certain specific workflow? Because you can't pull data unless you have, because there are interlinked data. For example, you have first to have the taxonomy data in GCCE before
Yes.
uploading any other data. So do you have a clear workflow for doing this?
Well, not really. It just comes up as I try to push data. I wanted to push accessions months ago, and I tried to push them, and then I realized you needed a taxonomy. So I was hurled back into taxonomy hell, and I fixed that first before I could move to accessions. But I think once you have the accessions, you can make the inventories quite quickly. Basically, I just try to send an object, and if it's as I explained, I first look how it is done in GGCE, and then I build my object with the data that I think I need to send. I test it in the Swagger UI, and then I start programming. But frankly, already when you start doing it in the Swagger UI, passing only the data that you want to pass, it will show you can't do it because you don't have the taxonomy, for example. So yeah, it's really, I look at which are the data that we want to synchronize. Is the data consistent? If it's not consistent, okay, which data is inconsistent? And then I start ticking the boxes like, okay, the geolocation is wrong. Then I will have the flow to update the geolocation. And I really stick by that workflow now from first seeing where it goes, because with geolocation, it was one of the first ones that I did. And I saw that the field kept popping up in 2 or 3 different locations. And first I wrote it to one of the other locations, and it wasn't updated. And then I realized that I first needed to check how GGCE, their standard interface, writes it away so that I am positive where it ends up and which command is used to avoid this confusion. But for the rest, no, I don't have any deeper insights.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you. One additional question is that do
Sure.
you, for example, for the endpoints that you call for GGCE, are they connected to one table or multiple tables in the database?
You mean from our internal database to GGCE?
The GGCE database,
That is the.
I
Well,
mean the API endpoints. For example, when you pull data to a specific endpoint, does it circulate all the data that is in the request to many tables, or one endpoint is linked to one table?
no, it's like one table, but the problem is that internally we design and we put data together that are that belong together in one table. But GGCE uses the USDA, and then it gets spread out over potentially for the multi MCPD data. We keep it in maybe 4 or 5 tables. In GGC, it's like I need to use 15 or 20 endpoints. I'm still not done. So if I use it internally, I just update one object and I say save and it's done. And for GGC, I need to construct all the objects one by one to update the field. Sometimes I can put 2 in one table, but it's very often I need to write to multiple tables in GGCE for one table in MGBMS, which makes it a lot of work for the same result.
Thank you. Any other question? If nobody have a question, I have maybe just a question comment. It means that, David, in this, when you show the taxon problems, it means that when you were also transferring the data, you also had the opportunity to check if your data in the information was correct or not, isn't it?
Yes, that's our starting point always. First, we read out what we have it and we compare it with what is in GGCE. And then only we push to GGCE if we see that it's needed. If it's already there, we're not going to push. We don't want to, it doesn't make sense to overwrite data that is already there. And we just want to make sure that we know exactly what is being written to GGCE.
Well, my other comment would be for Juan Carlos Alarcón, but I think he already left. Please correct me if I'm wrong, because I would like that he answer directly here in the seminar, means the crop trust to answer some of your points, because that is something that definitely is captured in our Excel with 93 actions. But some of the actions were already served, but we still need to work a lot on it, and that I really would like to listen directly from him. What would be the choices, because it's a very, very big difference if you have to do 3 or 4 actions, 20 actions instead of 1. So that is something that we have to think about.
I think the underlying thing is that the USDA database will never change. They might add an extra field here or there, but they're not gonna. I'm skeptical if that can be changed, but it's fine. Huh? It's just a bit more work. I think.
Thank you.
Yeah. But okay,
yeah, we understand the limitations.
I'm open. Yeah. The thing that I am most worried about, frankly, in GGC is the lack of signposting. That you just don't know what's going to happen without inspecting in the developer tools what actually happened. I find that very worrying that you don't see this data has been overwritten. This is, yeah, you know, or you should at least get it didn't work, or it did work, or part of it worked. But that's just my personal view.
Yeah, no, that is something that is also in the points that we catch it from everybody, and it's something that I will follow up with the crop trust, because it is important to know what we are doing, and that if we are doing something, that we are doing correctly. Yes, David.
Yeah, I'm trying to share the presentation, but it's not working out for me, which is a bit.
No, your presentation will be shared, like I said, in the link, so the record will be shared for everybody.
Okay. Yeah, but it might be easier to have the PowerPoint at hand. But it just stuck
Khadija,
here.
do you want to ask directly to David?
Yeah, I want just to know if for the UUIDs generated by the system, can you get them for new objects? For example, inventories or
in GGCE.
accession. Yeah, in GGCE. When you
just provide the data and then it's done.
So you can get them via the API also.
Yes.
Yeah.
I use the IDs, but normally if you create an accession, it doesn't have an API yet. An ID, sorry. If you create the accession, it does not have an ID yet. But once the ID is there, you can use the ID to get everything from an accession.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Still, there is time for questions if you have or comments. Meantime, I really thank you to David. Thank you very much. Very, very nice presentation, along with all the other ones.
Right. I see that in the
So,
chat, the presentation is available
so you
now.
you can download the presentation of David. You also will get the link for this when Simon will do the page along with all the other seminars. I really invite all of you, please, to also to give a seminar, because somebody already asked me why the seminars are important. For me, this is really extremely important, and I think we are already seeing the value. We are exchanging a lot of ideas, a lot of worries. It is also a very good indicator where we are, because yesterday, David, I think I was not accurate about Alliance. And that was one of the points that I want to talk with Alliance. And I'm seeing that Alliance is already also in the GGCE. So I'm happy for that. But please don't be shy. This is not to be who is good or who is not good, or who is doing wrong or who is doing right. There is no right or wrong, just doing and trying the best from our side. The Crop Trust is also doing the best from their side. And if there is no feedback, definitely there is no movement and no advancement. So I really incite anybody, including Norma, that you are very proactive in the seminars, to give a seminar to show what you are doing, to show what we have, and just to share knowledge. And to all the colleagues, including Dionys, just contact David if you have any question, because you are in the beginning of the process. Rizalina, the same, please contact. I will soon send an email to all of us with a suggestion that where we can communicate more often. Thank you very much. And thank you, David.
All right, good. Thanks a lot. Bye, and see you at next seminar then.